Hi, I'm Brian Biddle. Thanks for joining me on this masterclass about ways to increase donor retention, increase overall funding, and reduce overall costs. I'm going to move fast because there's a lot to cover in the next 20 minutes. What I will show you here has been proven to work in both the nonprofit and for-profit world. I'm going to show you overlooked tools that donors respond to positively, a framework of how to apply it, and the data that supports this information. There are two factors that mean everything to the success of a nonprofit organization. What is your mission, and are you accomplishing it? And do you have the necessary funds to accomplish your mission? Today, I want to show you a tool that is often overlooked by nonprofit organizations, a tool that is proven to increase funding results from your current donors and from your volunteers, ultimately reducing your fundraising costs, resulting in increased funding for your mission. It's a proven tool that engages and inspires current donors, engages and inspires volunteers, drives new donors, drives new volunteers, and decreases cost. That tool is branded merchandise. Before we get into the details of branded merchandise, we need to understand how your donors think. Much of the information we are referencing today is from the 2016 U.S. Trust Study of High Net Worth Philanthropy. We're not just pulling this information out of thin air. By the way, if you'd like a copy of this study, just let me know. I'm happy to share it with you. We need to understand our donors so we can know how to inspire them and motivate both your donors and volunteers to do all they can to support your mission. Let me share with you some statistics. Did you know that 25% simply don't know who you are? Step one of the donor journey is getting them to know you. 23% have no connection to you. They may know about you, but don't connect with you in any way. They've had no contact with you or your mission, or at least they don't think they have. 18% of high net worth donors just don't know who to give to. And 4% don't think that they can make a difference. 42% want to identify a volunteer opportunity. And who is the best person to convince them that your mission is a great place to volunteer? Well, I think it's one of your current volunteers or donors. 50% want to give where it will have the largest impact. And who is better qualified to talk about impact than your current donors and volunteers? Apply this also to the 19% who volunteer where they see impact. Volunteers and donors can be your best evangelists if you give them the tools to step into that role. A few more items that speak to the behavior of high net worth donors. 18% felt that nonprofits did not communicate with them effectively. So how can we be more effective in showing our appreciation to donors and volunteers? I won't read off the entire list, but I do want to point out two important statistics. 9% donate because of their peer group, and 17% determine the impact of their giving from their peers. How can you influence prospective donors and prospective volunteers as well as current donors and volunteers in a way that you haven't? By influencing their peer group. In the for-profit world, there's a saying, most problems disappear with more sales. Translating this into the nonprofit world, I think we can say that most problems disappear when we have more donations. How do we keep donations growing? We have to have engaged potential donors, current donors, and volunteers. Engaged donors and volunteers give more, stay longer, and have significantly higher lifetime value. The challenge is finding effective ways to engage donors and volunteers in ways that are meaningful, effective, and affordable. So, how do we engage donors and volunteers? One powerful answer is branded merchandise. So, what's so special about branded merchandise? Why is it so powerful? Well, this isn't rocket science. It's all about impressions, the donor's reaction, the results of the donor's reaction, starting inspired conversations, and its constant presence. Let me explain. First, let's talk about impressions. Everyone buying advertising gets obsessed with impressions. How many am I going to get? How much is each impression going to cost? How easy is it to repeat? How many will I get to the same audience so I can build frequency? How long will the impressions last? How can I be sure? For the sake of transparency, the information I'm going to be sharing with you comes from Global Advertising Specialties Impressions Study 2016, copyright 2016, Advertising Specialty Institute. Branded merchandise has some remarkable results. 85% of consumers in the world remembers the organization who gave them a hat or a shirt. 85%. That's powerful. Is that worth the cost of a hat or a shirt? Secondly, branded merchandise lasts. People keep them around because they have utility or usefulness. If you give someone an umbrella, on average, they're going to keep it for around 14 months. That's 14 months they're going to be seeing your message and being reminded of your mission. Power banks, a year. Calendars, a year. Well, I guess that makes sense. Outerwear, 9 months. Additionally, a huge number of consumers pass the merchandise along to someone else when they're done with it, extending the life of the item. How many impressions can they generate? Well, in the US, the top performing item is a bag. In a 6-month period, it generates 5,772 impressions. A hat, 3,126 impressions. Writing instruments, 2,805 impressions. Outerwear, 2,650 impressions. And shirts, 2,450 impressions. If a bag costs you $5, is there any other vehicle that you are using that can generate that kind of impact for the same investment? Now, while the cost may seem high, when it's effectively distributed and utilized, the cost per impression is the same as internet advertising. Most organizations I have talked to are heavily invested in online advertising. And the primary reason is because it's economical and relatively targetable. It's a great tool. It's only one tool, though. I like to say, you can't build a house with a hammer. You need other tools. There is a way that branded merchandise stands head and shoulders above other forms of communications. In this infographic, we ask, what happens when you ask 2,000 people the following question? When you receive a promotional product, how do you feel about the company that gave it to you? Here's a larger view of the infographic so you can see the results better. Look at the dominant reactions. Good, grateful, happy. How often have you felt that way when a commercial interrupts the video you're watching? Or when you have to wait on the commercial to run before you can play the next level of Candy Crush? Consumers dislike commercials so much, they pay extra to get the version that excludes the commercials. Consumers like getting branded merchandise. They like getting a gift. Consumers are nearly 2.5 times more likely to have a positive opinion of a branded merchandise item compared to internet advertising. Finally, branded merchandise is the most highly regarded form of communication, while internet and mobile advertising are the least regarded. I'm going to repeat a slide here to talk about impact. It's important to be reminded of how many times people see your mission and brand with a relatively small investment in branded merchandise. Consumers appreciate the gift, they use the gift, and in using the gift, they expose others to your mission and brand. When was the last time one of your donors passed along a letter from you or a screenshot of your advertisement to one of their friends? Now I'll turn to some more market data about the nonprofit world. Most of this information comes from organizations like Bloomerang, Philanthropy Today, and the 2017 Fundraising Effectiveness Project. We are consumed with finding new donors. In surveys I've conducted in the last year, donor acquisition is the number one problem facing nonprofit organizations. Donor retention is the number two challenge. It's my premise that it's because organizations fall short in donor retention that they struggle with donor acquisition. Let's look at the numbers. New donors are expensive. It costs 95 to 105% of the donor's first year giving to acquire that donor. To put it in a different way, all the new donors acquired in any given year contribute only to paying the cost of getting them. These are not my numbers. This is data that's easily found in a number of publications. Across the U.S., nonprofits lose 55% of their donors after their first gift. No wonder we're all working so hard. The churn is real. We keep so few for more than a year, we become obsessed with finding new donors. Now, here's another frightening statistic. For every 100 donors gained, 99 are lost through attrition. This is so outrageous that I have to show you the source. Again, I'm not making these numbers up. They are real. And in my opinion, they're frightening. I come from the for-profit world. If I lost 99% of my clients every year, I'd be out of business. I don't have the resources or the energy to replace 99% of my clients every year. Instead, I spend approximately 90% of my time making sure my current clients are happy and 10% of my time finding new clients. If you want a copy of this report, I'll be happy to get it to you. Now, here's a positive statistic. For every 1% you can increase donor retention, your total funding increases up to 4%. So we can have a momentous impact on funding if we make relatively small improvements in our donor retention. So at this point, we have to ask ourselves, is there a better way? Well, the answer is yes, there is a better way. Stated as simply as possible, we must turn our current donors into evangelists to our cause by creating stronger engagement with them and giving them the tools to begin advocacy conversations with their peers. We create a stronger bond with our current donors and volunteers by utilizing branded merchandise. They become your walking billboards. They become your voice in the street. They show their support and share your mission with those who don't know about you and don't know what impact you're making. So, what are the results you can expect from an effective branded merchandising program? First, your current donors and volunteers have a constant reminder of your mission because they're using the products, and their peer group sees constant reminders of your mission. Your donor becomes a walking endorsement of your mission. Anyone who sees them will conclude that the user believes in the mission. If those users are leaders, well-respected, well-liked people, it will influence their peers. I mean, how many people wear a hat with the logo of their least favorite team or their least favorite college? People wear apparel of the organizations they support. They are showing a visible commitment to your mission and their loyalty to your cause. When deployed effectively, your branded merchandising program generates huge amounts of impressions. For example, on average, if you gave out or sold 100 bags, you could generate 577,200 impressions in a 6-month period for an investment of between $300 and $1,500 depending on the bag. When you give an item, you show sincere appreciation for the donor's gift in a way that a simple card, email, or note just can't. Dale Carnegie's seminal book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is largely based on this basic social psychology principle of reciprocity. We pay back what we receive from others. In other words, when you're nice to someone, they're wired to be nice to you. And here's what I think is most important. You give the donor the ability to generate advocacy conversations. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, your donor may be an absolute believer in your cause. They may be a lifetime donor, but they rarely know how to start effective conversations with others about your mission. By supplying them with a hat or a shirt or a bag, they advertise the mission and give others the opportunity to ask what it's all about. And while I'm not going to cover it in this presentation, this is why design is so critical when embarking on a merchandising campaign. But we'll help you with that. If the design is compelling, it generates curiosity in the audience who then seeks to understand. Now, your donor becomes an important referral source for your organization, as well as showing a powerful personal endorsement of your mission. No one is better at endorsing a cause than someone who believes in it and supports it themselves. And finally, as your donor uses the gift you've given them or uses the item they've purchased, they become more committed to your mission. Another interesting principle of social psychology tells us that the more we advocate or talk about a subject, the more committed we become to our beliefs about that subject. In other words, the more we can get donors talking about the mission, the more committed they will become to the mission, and the more they influence those around them. Now, I can hear the wheels in your head turning. Your donors are going to object from getting a gift from you, if that's your plan. Sure, some will. They're going to say, we want you to use resources on me. We want you to use your resources on the mission. I don't need anything. Is this the best use of your resources? They want you to be financially responsible. And you need to acknowledge all of these. However, if they understand what you're doing, they'll support what you're doing. First, if they object, it gives you a chance to say, we really appreciate your gift and want to say thank you in this special way. Then we should explain that we're supplying a tool to help them engage others about the mission and enable them to visibly support the mission in their community. 99 out of 100 are going to see what you're doing, understand it, and support your effort. And at last, I hear your objections. What do we stock? How much inventory should we have? How do I pick the right products? How much is this going to cost? What about warehousing? The answer to all of these questions depend on the company with whom you partner. I can't speak for other companies, but I can speak for what we have developed. Proforma Signature Solutions has developed a program that eliminates inventory, eliminates carrying costs, eliminates the risk to build the site. What we do is empower you to build a stronger program to retain your current donors, increase your funding, and decrease the number of nights you stay awake wondering how you're going to meet your fundraising goals. If you'd like to know more about how you can use branded merchandise to increase your donor retention, decrease costs, and increase overall funding, please reach out to me. If you'd like to understand how to transform your constituents into walking branded endorsements and referral machines, reach out to me. I'll look at your particular situation, the size of your organization, and the audience you're trying to reach, and we'll see if this makes sense for your nonprofit. I'm Brian Biddle. Thanks for listening.